So today is Saturday, February 23rd, 2019, uh, and we will resume uh, looking at Jatakas in Before Buddha Was Buddha. As I've said though before, we won't be using the text that the finished text that was became the book Before Buddha Was Buddha, but we'll be looking at the entire story rather than a synopsis, and then a revised text that was a bit, well, what's the word? This is both a text that I've revised since Before Buddha Was Buddha, including longer segments of the commentary that I removed from the book so that it would be tighter. So we'll look today at the Jataka, Satapatha Jataka, number 279. That's the Jataka of the robber. The story goes like this. Long ago, back when a Brahmadatta still reigned in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born into a very poor family in a very poor village. When he was grown, he gathered a group of 500 skilled robbers and became their chief, the most skilled robber of all. After that, he and his men lived by highway robbery and housebreaking. Now, at that time, a landowner who had lent 1,000 pieces of money died before the loan had been repaid. And not long after he passed away, his wife too lay deathly ill. She said to their son, "Your father lent money to a man in that village beyond the forest. Once I'm dead, he won't feel obligated to repay it. Go now and get the money he owes us before it's too late." So the son set off as his mother asked. He got the money they were owed, then started for home. But unknown to him, his mother had already died. But because of her deep love for him, she took form again, almost immediately, as a jackal living in the forest along the very road he'd be coming. She meant to watch out for him and watch over him. Her great mother love had transformed her. So the Bodhisattva and his band of 500 robbers were lying in wait for travelers along that very road. When the boy arrived at the entrance to the forest, the little jackal appeared before him and began to growl, howl, and snarl. His mother, as that jackal, was saying, "Dear son, don't go down this road. Take another route. Robbers wait here. They will get you if you continue down this road." The boy only saw a crazed jackal. Every time he tried to go around and continue, the little jackal bared its teeth and blocked his way. A mad jackal, a dangerous beast, he thought. I've got to get home with this money. So hurling sticks, stones, and clods of earth, he drove the jackal away, finally, and proceeded on. As he walked on, a crane soared overhead and made a great loud cry. What it was saying was, "Hey, you robbers, here's easy prey. This boy carries 1,000 pieces. You can kill him easily and take all his money." The young man, looking up at the crane flying and cawing overhead, thought, "Fortune smiles on me. The cry of a crane is a good omen." And so he called out, "Thanks, brother crane, thanks for your good wishes." And feeling more secure than ever, he hurried on. The Bodhisattva hidden nearby had seen and heard the jackal, heard its snarls, and also heard the crane's cry, as well as taking in the boy's naive response. Though now a robber, due to good efforts in past lives, he understood the language of beasts and birds. And he thought, that little jackal was the boy's mother in a previous life. She clearly, probably in this life, she clearly only wanted to help him and was even willing to take blows to make him turn back. That was love in action. She knew we lay in wait to catch him. And the crane, why, that crane must have been the boy's enemy in some past life. It wasn't wishing him well at all. Instead, it was telling us to rob him. The kid had it all backwards. That's pitiful. Just then the boy approached, and all the robbers leapt from hiding and grabbed him. And the Bodhisattva came forward and asked, "Where are you from?" "Benares," stammered the boy, in fear for his life. "And where are you coming from?" "I'm coming from the village on the other side of the forest. I'm on my way home." "Did you receive 1,000 pieces of money there?" asked the Bodhisattva. "How did you know?" asked the boy, astonished. "My father loaned a man in that village exactly that amount. When my father died, the loan had not been repaid, so my mother sent me to get it." "Did someone there give me away?" "No, no one." "Tell me, was your mother ill when you left?" "Yes, this is why I'm hurrying home now. She may need my help." "I'm sorry," said the robber chief Bodhisattva, "but your mother has died. I understand the language of birds and animals. That jackal was your mother. Out of love for you, she came to warn you that we robbers lay in wait. And the crane wasn't your friend, not at all. It didn't wish you well. It was telling us that you carried 1,000 pieces and were ripe to be robbed. You totally misread the signs and walked blindly into danger. Look, go home. Your father and mother are both dead. Hold a memorial service for them. You have the money your mother meant for you to have. From now on, watch and listen more carefully. Don't jump to easy conclusions. Things may not be what they seem." His men began to grumble, but the Bodhisattva said, "Pah, we'll let this one go. He's just too pitiful. A fat merchant will come our way soon enough. We'll get all we need from him." They shrugged and released the boy. The boy thanked the Bodhisattva. Then he walked through the forest, going on, thinking deeply of all he'd seen and heard. He had been completely wrong, and yet it had seemed so clear. And then it hit him. His mother was dead. He thought then of the little jackal that had tried to bar his way and how he'd chased it and driven it away. And then he realized how little he actually knew. He vowed to keep his eyes open and not lose his way in easy assumptions. So that's the Jataka. Now, let's take a look at this from the perspective of practice. We all know the Buddha, or think we do. He's always presented as the righteous one, the do-good one, the protect all beings, heroic one. Along these lines, a typical Jataka, number 265, remember this one was 279, so they're not far apart, goes like this. And this is much more typical. The Buddha was born into a long line of foresters and lived near the entrance to a forest. When grown, he worked as a guide, leading travelers and merchants through those dark woods. One day, a merchant with a caravan of 500 wagons needed his services. The Bodhisattva agreed to guide them, was paid 1,000 pieces of money to see them through. Halfway into their journey through the forest, 500 robbers leapt from hiding and set upon them. The entire company fell on their faces, overcome by terror. The entire company but one. The Bodhisattva, shouting, leaping, and dealing fierce blows left and right, put all 500 robbers to flight. Once the robbers had fled, he guided the caravan safely through to the forest's other side. That night, when they were camped, and after the Bodhisattva and the merchant had dined together on the best of the food stores in the caravan, the merchant asked him, "What's your secret? How is it that when everyone else was overcome by terror and rendered completely useless, you alone had the strength to take on our attackers and drive them off? This would be a good secret to know." The Bodhisattva looked at him and said, "I don't have a secret. I just had a job to do. It's what I was paid for. I swore to protect you and your caravan and was resolved to do everything I could to keep my word. I didn't cling to life, but used it to fulfill my purpose." And that's the Jataka. He's not a robber. He protects others from robbers. The teaching is clear. Forget yourself. Give yourself completely, selflessly to what you vow. Enter the task or challenge at hand, and much can be accomplished. But stay trapped in a habitual sense of who and what you are and only seek to protect that. You end up limiting your own potential. In terms of spiritual practice, Zen tradition calls someone who has had some realization and then tries to protect or hold to that and maintain it, rather than freeing themselves from it and moving on. They call such a one a ghost guarding a corpse. Zen Master Hakuin says that Zen Buddhism is like the ocean. The further or farther you swim in it, the deeper it gets. It's like a mountain, he said. The more you climb it, the higher it gets. Staying and guarding what we already have is stuckness and stagnation. Our task is to let go of whatever we've attained or not attained, get back to real right now practice, and go on and on. One person fighting against 500 is often used in Zen as a metaphor dramatizing the vigor and resolve of active zazen. Though Zen sitting is silent, it is not passive. Amid distractions, wandering thoughts, and self-involved concerns that, like robbers, can steal our attention, making us lose the riches of this moment, our job is to stay alert. Attention, 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 wrote Zen Master Ikkyu to a man seeking words of wisdom and inspiration. But vigor and resolve don't have to be misinterpreted to mean tension or strain. Awareness doesn't require physical force. Aitken Roshi used to encourage us students in Doksan by saying, muse on this. Kaplo Roshi, on the other hand, admonished us to work hard. In the early years of our practice, this can seem quite paradoxical. It's like learning a new skill, and awareness is a skill, as is deep questioning. In the beginning, we fumble, overreach, push too hard, and mismanage our energy. This is all part of a normal learning curve. In time, our practice readily enters into the activities of our lives and also relishes sitting deeply and quietly, letting all we may be clinging to simply go. This Jataka proclaims, take heart. If we drop our attachment, that is, shift our focus from the habitual, self-centered, dualistic, me in here, you out there self, then, even as countless thoughts arise, by staying with our practice, we become like a person single-handedly facing and successfully handling a horde of aggressive foes. Zen Master Dogen says that this shift, this dropping or seeing through the self-centered self, is the very heart of Zen. He wrote, to study or practice the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by the 10,000 things. When actualized by the 10,000 things, body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. This doesn't mean they disappear. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. Hakuin writes, young man, if you fear death, die now. Once dead, you won't have to die later. Courage, wisdom, and compassion boil down to one good brew. If we release our death grip on our habitual self-centeredness, everything we encounter gains richness and flavor. Everything. The way of the Bodhisattva literally means the way of the wisdom being. But wisdom doesn't mean smarts. It means maturity. I now see the way of the Bodhisattva in much more ordinary terms. It really means the way of the growing up person. The person maturing beyond their own habitual self-centeredness. This is wisdom. This is the foundation of benefiting all beings. Acting and living and moving from this less self-involved place, we have the room for the needs of others to be perceived and responded to. This is the way of the Bodhisattva, the way of the growing up, maturing being. That's all it means. In this Jataka, a dying woman becomes a jackal to save a child she loves. This is not rebirth, but transformation. Can such things happen? I have no idea. But the 2,500-year-old Jatakas and the most current findings of modern science agree that animals are individuals and can make astonishingly complex choices and decisions based on what looks like, very much like, there's no other word for it, but love. There is a Jataka in which the Bodhisattva is a horse in the service of a king. When the kingdom is invaded, the horse goes off into the madness of war. His determination is such, the horse's determination is such, that he breaks through the opposing enemy ranks 6 times, and he and his rider capture 6 enemy kings. In the last encounter, he is badly wounded. When they start to remove his armor to put it on a fresh mount, the Bodhisattva horse rises again to his feet and says, "Leave it on. I am determined. No other horse can do it. I mean to end this war." And off he goes, captures the final king, returns, and dies. He has given his life beyond all self-concern to his chosen life task. Today, horses, dogs, elephants, goats, dolphins, even cats have all been recorded on video doing what seem to be equally courageous, selfless things. Perhaps this is our common nature, when not blocked, when not conditioned to be less than it might be, less than we might be. Yet, how many of us fear that when the time comes to act bravely, we might freeze and end up groveling like the merchant's men, terrified into immobility? Young men often suffer deeply from such doubt and may put on bold fronts or take crazy risks to hide it, yet they may still wonder, if such and such happened, would I be strong enough or brave enough to do the right thing? And they can recklessly push themselves into danger just to find out or to bury that gnawing fear even more deeply. Forgetting the self, paintings are painted, poems are written, plays made on the ball field, neighbors helped, koans resolved, and the 10,000 things allowed to enter and confirm us. The core, not just of our practice, but of our lives, lies in letting go of attachment to the concept of an internal, forever separated selfhood. As Dogen says, we don't have to push the self forward to become one with the 10,000 things of ordinary life. If we get out of the way, that is, forget ourselves, by seeing the self so clearly it becomes porous, and let the 10,000 things claim us, we realize intimacy, which is the root meaning of enlightenment. Blake called our habitual attachment to the concept of an inner separated selfhood the limit of contraction, and named it stunningly, mischievously, and perhaps accurately, Satan. "Truly, my Satan," he wrote, "you are a dunce," which may be the root of the problem. Satan is our dunce-like tendency to not see beyond self-centeredness, and so not make real efforts, committed efforts toward moment-by-moment practice realization. Practice realization is Zen practice actualizing, not trying to get realization. Practice as the process of innate realization, waking up. We may be dilettantes showing up for practice. We may become dilettantes showing up for practice only when we find it convenient, when it entails no sacrifice. We may look like we're sitting, but are we? Or are we rearranging the living room furniture at home in our minds, or writing that angry letter to the insurance company, or whatever? The best moments of our lives rarely seem to be those, however, when we are overly self-concerned. Instead, they are the times when we forget ourselves completely. And stars, wind, rain, a child, a pet, a friend, a river, a bird's song walk in so fully we are gone. They are us. Yet self-concern is such a deep old habit that, like addicts, we return to it again and again. And so we must consciously choose to practice again and again, entering this very moment as it is ordinary, unfathomable, never repeatable, never to be seen again. Thinking that the arising of thought and feeling is a permanent self, we easily become isolated, alone and afraid in a world we never made, as the quote goes. Yet, as isolated as we are, stars still shine, the moon still swims across the night sky, and a golden sun still rises over green hills every morning. For whom do these wonders take place? Yet, not only do we hardly see them, we fail to grasp that stars, moon, clouds, sun, hills, just as they are us. Nothing is separate. Yet at the same time, each is fully itself. We suffer because of our own our own error, our own lack of vigorous application. Lost in our robber-ridden dark forest dream, we hunger for riches, for fame or power as bulwarks against aging death and the vast inconsequence of our own ordinary, unheralded, too brief lives. We can bend ourselves out of shape to ally ourselves with what seems to offer protection, security, and permanence. We can make ourselves sick with overwork and worry in the name of what we like to call success. There's nothing wrong with being successful or with being valued for what we can offer, yet a legacy of unresolved childhood issues and conditioning can, in this very search for happiness, turn us into sleepwalkers. Instead of bumping into furniture and walls, though, in our moving about while fast asleep, not awake, we end up polluting streams, mangling forests, poisoning rivers, air, and fertile land. Our task is to wake up. But because we fall asleep again and again, we must commit to practicing awakeness or realization over and over as well. This practice of awakening continues endlessly. Even breath counting is not simply a practice of counting breaths. It is a practice of awakening to this breath, this count. This is what we've signed on for. This is our life task every day. We begin by trying to find the self that runs the whole crazy caravan. Zen asks us to look, really look, and find it. It makes sense. If we want to wake, we must look into the root of our sleep. The second patriarch of Zen, Wyeth, climbed a mountain in winter snow, desperate for Bodhidharma's help. Bodhidharma, in case number 41 of the Wumen Quan, or Gateless Barrier, says to him, "Bring me this mind that is causing you so much distress. Present it, and I'll give it peace." Wyeth was so relieved. His anguish was about to be eased, his problem solved. So he searched for that self that had no peace. And he searched, and he sat, and he sat. He did his best, but he could not find it. Bodhidharma Zen was brilliantly to the point. Rather than adding a thing, he took away Wyeth's error, thereby freeing him. Wyeth then went on to free others. This brilliant Zen has led to us sitting and practicing here, right now. Zen is a corrective, helping us find the peace that is already ours if we only knew. It is not simply an Asian cultural import. It is the realization of our own mind, yours and mine. It is a way of maturing as a human being, of growing up. Take away the exotic trappings. And that's what you find. Simply a direct path to our own maturity. Yet the Buddha wasn't always on the high road. We have this odd little Jataka of the Buddha as a robber. Even so, he's the kind of person we can't help but like, the rogue as hero, a familiar Han Solo type who, while seemingly just out for themselves, in the end is ready to put their own life and self at risk for others and the right. It is a character type with strength and a readiness to take risks and accept consequences. In short, life energy. Its confidence is its faith. Blake says that all true poets are of the devil's party. Appearances and labels like angel or devil, saint or sinner can be quite deceptive. Look, as far as the Sheriff of Nottingham was concerned, Robin Hood was a robber, and so a bad man, an antisocial opponent of the legally recognized order. So, too, you'd be a lawbreaker if you sheltered or aided runaway slaves in slavery times, as you'd be if you were hiding or helping Jews in Nazi-occupied Europe. So what do such labels have to do with real right and real wrong? Zen does not ask us to get rid of ourselves, or to become another better, more spiritual self, or some kind of special Zen person. Rather, we are asked simply to realize the intimate self that is already us right now, to realize it to the bottomless ground of our just as we are, with all our faults and flaws, present being. The point, if there can be said to be one, is not to free us to do what we want when we want, not that freedom. It's not to make us better this or that, or better at this or that, not that freedom. Its aim is to free us from ourselves, from the self we cherish, the self we may lie, cheat, steal, even kill to protect, from our obsessive, habitual, compulsive, anxiously cramped interest in ourselves and who we think we are and what we think or have been taught to think we want. Zen is not about contemplating navels. It is about releasing not just navels, but eyes, ears, nose, tongues, bodies, minds. It is about realizing the freedom that has been ours from the start. It is about seeing stars, clouds, grasses, flowers, maple trees, oak trees, redbud trees, crows, jays, sparrows, hawks, mountains, poison ivy, ants, rivers, cell phones, garbage cans, Hondas, Subarus, Chevys, Fords, Priuses, sidewalks, teaspoons, dogs, cats, squirrels, people, the so-called 10,000 things, simply as they are, which means intimately, which means truly. Upon his great awakening, the Buddha is said to have spontaneously proclaimed, wonder of wonders, all beings are Buddha, already fully endowed with wisdom and virtue. It's just that their own deeply self-centered, delusive thinking prevents them from realizing this. Zen helps us to put that self-centered, delusive thinking aside. You won't be more Buddha thousands of lifetimes from now. So how do we realize what we already are right now? Mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers, as the Zen saying goes. It's the same river it always was, yet for a time, maybe a moment or a day, it's not the same. It's no longer stuffed into that same old mental box called river. It's no longer my river. It's closer, much closer, much more intimate than that. A river is not a river until a river is a river is a river. Then that's all there is. River. This is releasing the stars to shine in the dark night, flowers to spring, and birds to the blue sky so they can be themselves. Dogen says that this is dana paramita, the perfection of giving, giving everything the freedom to be what it actually already is, without loading our usual limiting, self-centered projections onto it. Freeing ourselves from ourselves is freeing the world from the bondage we put on it. Freeing things from being seen only in relation to ourselves and their use or lack of it to ourselves. This is the perfection work of dana paramita, the perfection of giving that we are called to by the events of each day. This is life as zazen, zazen as life. This is the practice of maturing as a human being. Like the young man in the Jataka, without the clarity that arises through ongoing practice realization, we can end up reading the signs around us completely wrong. The person who tells us something we don't like becomes our enemy. The person who tells us what is pleasing becomes our friend. Yet the rainy day that ruins our picnic may open us to unforeseen good. Ella Fitzgerald, singing A Foggy Day in London Town, tells that old tale. Winning the lottery, we are relieved of our sleepless nights, freed of tossing on waves of financial anxiety. We do a dance, we shout for joy, we buy a yacht, the ship goes down. Our kids become wastrels and addicts. Our relatives move in, old friends despise us. The good news sours. What we don't know won't hurt us no longer holds if it ever did. What we don't know burns forests, melts ice caps, poisons streams, wreaks havoc on the air we breathe, destroys species with whom we've been co-evolving for millennia, breaks down social networks and friendships. Like the young man in the Jataka, we put ourselves in harm's way with our ignorance of who and what we and all things actually are, what we and all things are actually saying by the way we live and think and move. We stumble about fouling our own nest, burning down our own house, even as we attempt to just go on and keep living in it. The Bodhisattva as a robber, while seemingly not on an ethical path, remains, nonetheless, on the great way. Karma has brought him to his robber employment. He seems to be the opposite of what he was in the Jataka, where he unselfconsciously risked his life to protect a caravan from robbers. Robbers violate Buddhist precepts, the second of which is, I resolve not to take what is not given, but to respect the things of others. Robbing is out. You'd think a bodhisattva would do better at upholding that. Yet, is the bodhisattva necessarily less a bodhisattva as a robber, and more a bodhisattva as one who protects from robbers? To answer, we'd have to know his inner motivation, what his times in karma demanded, what the local government was up to, what the wealthy community was doing with their money. We tend to like the rule breaker with the good heart much better than we like the self-righteous, pious sort, who can easily turn into a bully. Corporations steal the land of peasants. Peasants fighting back to preserve their land and homes are called thieves by corporate-controlled media. Which side truly upholds the precepts? There is a famous Tibetan Buddhist tale about a monk in the time of Langdharma, a medieval and evil Tibetan king. So this monk is in the ceremonial black hat dance, and he's painted the inside of his black robe white. As he whirls in the dance, he launches an arrow from his sleeve that kills the king. He runs off, turning his robe inside out to its hidden white side. He mounts a black horse and rides into the river. The horse swims the river, and the black paint he's painted it with washes off. It was really a white horse. The monk is never found. His motivation had been to save others, protect the Dharma. Monasteries were being destroyed and teachers killed, and to save Langdharma, the king himself, from accumulating further bad karma. The first Buddhist precept is, I resolve not to kill, but to cherish all life. Given the chance to kill Hitler, would restraining ourselves from killing or going ahead and taking his life be the more virtuous act? To kill a killer, not simply out of vengeance or punishment, to prevent more killing, is a high ideal. But what about killing a murderer to stop him from murdering his own deepest potential? This would clearly be a morass when it comes to legal and religious doctrine. Still, how about that monk? Was he a murderer, a violator of the precept not to kill but to cherish all life? Or not? Some parents get upset about the old tale of Jack the Giant Killer. They admit that Jack was good-hearted, clever, and courageous, but they add, he's a thief. That's not a good role model for our children. Besides, giants aren't real. Giants aren't real? Ask any child about that. Giants drive their car, make their meals, dole out their allowance. Children must eat at the giant's table, and if lucky, don't fall when they're little into the giant's toilet or into their schemes and plans. Giants hold all the cards. A child needs courage and wits to survive in this very real world of giants. When the giant roars, it can be terrifying. When the giant punishes, it can be terrible. The giant's rules make no sense, yet must be obeyed. What a lifesaver then it might be to learn of Jack, someone small, but with a start heart, courage, and wits, who can steal treasure from the giant as well as his own independence from the giant's clumsy grasp. Someone with enough nerve to stand his ground when facing a giant. And then the axe comes out and timber and adios, giant. And who's to say where the giant got his wealth? Maybe the singing harp belonged to a minstrel done in by the giant, or maybe the talking hen belonged to a farmer or a magician with the one with the magic beans, or maybe they'd once belonged even to Jack's father, a respected hero himself, until the world turned against him, as the world so often can and does. Maybe Jack is righting wrong, stealing from the real thief, equalizing unbalanced times. What about giant corporations in our time? Mightn't we applaud some Jack the Giant Killer if he climbed up their vine and redistributed their ill-gained wealth? The Bodhisattva was a thief, a robber in a past life. Well, aren't Zen teachers thieves? Didn't Bodhidharma steal Wyeth blind? A good teacher steals away our long-cherished beliefs, our hard-gripped truths, our self-righteous treasures, our blind adherence to unexamined points of view. Our own practice opens the door, unlocks the windows, and lets a robber break into our house to steal us totally blind. What is Mu but the ultimate robber? If we're lucky, our teacher or Mu itself will take everything away, get it all, and as Shakespeare says in The Tempest, leave not a rack behind. Then what is there? Freedom is not added to us. When everything we thought we were and knew is gone, entirely gone, what may we then find? As the song says, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Maybe as the leader of a robber band, the Bodhisattva was perfecting his skill, preparing for that time, lifetimes ahead, when he would be the teacher to all beings, robbing his students of their delusive, limiting preconceptions. Being a robber might turn out to be a useful skill for helping others. Maybe he was taking money from those who'd stolen it themselves, from poor farmers and honest tradesmen. Laws can be unethical. To be ethical, we might have to break them. The story does not give us the contexts. There might be truths beneath the surface. The Bodhisattva as a robber had skill and power. He could even understand the language of animals. This is an ancient shorthand. It appears all around the world for saying that a person has wisdom. To understand the language of animals means that our own human self-centeredness is gone to such a degree that we easily understand the non-human world, the cat, the crow, the fox, the wind, the ant. Each is giving messages. Without our self-centeredness firmly in place, these messages get through to us. This means to understand the language of animals, it means being intimate with our own nature and the nature of all things, not just human beings, not just ourselves. This is an ancient shorthand all around the world, as I've said, that puts it very close to our great vows. Many beings are numberless. I vow to free them all. To free them all, we have to drop our self-centeredness and let them all in. This means being intimate, as I've said, with our own nature and the nature of all things. To understand the language of animals, of birds and beasts means we reside at the core of life. In this placeless place, we're not going to find a charlatan or an egomaniac. That's all summed up. Whenever you see in some folk literature a story about someone who understands the language of animals, that's all implicit there. It's an old ways view. While the Bodhisattva may be a robber, he's also a person of wisdom and compassion. Look, he doesn't take the boy's money, not a penny, and he's a robber. He lets him go. And he takes some guff from his men about it as well. He's a robber, but could a saint do better? Then again, maybe he's a robber, hoodlum, rogue, scoundrel, but with good karma from the past. He saw this young man, grasped what was up, saw that mother's love, and was moved. And then he did something out of character that lost him money and caused his men to grumble, but that nevertheless felt right and good. It expressed something maybe even he couldn't name. His bodhisattvic appreciation of a deeper, more universal ethic is revealed, not by the wildness of his life as a robber, a rule breaker, but by his willingness to restrain his own self-centeredness. That is, by his ability to set aside the unconscious self-interest that to one degree or another drives us all. A robber might have purposes unknown even to themselves, and when time and circumstance are right, a robber might do things that surprise even themselves. We too, with our own shortcomings, our flaws, our past bad choices, can, with right now practice, work hard to embody the way, drop self-centeredness, and uphold the precepts of our deeper nature. Practicing regularly, we too can learn to listen well, grasp in a deepening way the real meaning of all the signs around us, and do what is right. This is our actual daily situation. It is also our daily choice, our life's work as human beings on this planet, our growing determination through the hours and days and weeks and months and years of practice, realization, and it is the expression of our deepest vow. We'll stop here, recite our great vows for all, and then, it'll be almost time to start Samu, don't you think, Rose? Okay, so we'll do our great vows, and then we'll